Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to break down one of programming's most fundamental tools, the list, which you'll also hear called an array. This is the key to managing collections of data, whether it's high scores in a game or just your daily to-do list. So, here's what we've got on tap. We're going to start with a super common programming headache. Then, I'll show you the elegant solution, and we'll see how it works, how you can change it, and then how to unlock its true power. And of course, we'll wrap it all up with a handy cheat sheet so you don't forget a thing. Okay, let's dive right in by talking about a problem that, well, every single new programmer runs into. How in the world do you handle a whole bunch of related information without creating a gigantic mess?
So picture this. You're building a game, and it's a massive hit. People love it. Now you need to keep track of the top 100 high scores. So how would you actually do that, like in the code?
Well, I guess you could create 100 different variables, right? You know, score 1, score 2, score 3, all the way up to 100. But you can probably already feel how clumsy that is. It would be an absolute nightmare to manage. Surely there's a better way.
And of course there is. And this brings us to the solution. It's a really powerful concept called a list, or as it's known in a ton of languages like JavaScript, an array.
So what is it? Simply put, an array is just one single container that holds a whole bunch of related stuff. So instead of those 100 separate variables for your high scores, you've got just one variable that holds all 100 of them. Super neat, right?
You know, the best way to think about this is like a row of little numbered boxes. Each box has something inside it, a value, like the color red, and each box has its own specific address, which is just a position number. We call that its index.
And actually making one? It's super simple. You just use squared brackets. You can start with a totally empty list and fill it up later, or you can go ahead and preload it with values, like a list of numbers or a list of text for the colors of the rainbow.
Okay, so we've got our data all nice and organized in these boxes, but how do we actually get to a specific item? To read what's in it or maybe even change it? Well, the key to all of this is that index number we just talked about. And this right here is probably the single most important rule you need to remember, especially if you're working with JavaScript. Indexing starts at 0. I'll say it again. The very first item in any list is at position 0, not 1. This is like the classic mistake for beginners. So, to get a value out, you just use the list's name followed by the index you want inside square brackets. So, rainbow colors with a 0, that gives us the very first item, which is red. And this difference is so important. While JavaScript and a ton of modern languages start at 0, you'll find some systems, like the pseudocode you might see on an AP exam, that actually start at 1. So what's the takeaway here? Always know the rules of the system you're working in.
Forgetting this rule, well, that's where our really common bug called an off-by-1 error comes from. And honestly, it's a mistake that even really experienced developers make sometimes, so it's definitely something to watch out for.
And what about changing a value? It's just as easy. You just target the item with its index and assign a new value to it. Boom. Here we're swapping out whatever was at index 4 with the new value cyan. Okay, now lists aren't just these, static boxes that never change. The real magic is that they're dynamic. You can add things, you can remove things on the fly, you can literally change their size while your program is running.
So there are three main things we can do. We can append an item, which is just a fancy way of saying add it to the very end. We can insert one anywhere we want, right in the middle. And of course, we can remove an item completely.
So in JavaScript, if you want to tack an item onto the very end of a list, you use a built-in command called push. Simple as that. Every time you use push, the list just gets one item longer.
But what if you want a bit more control? Like, what if you want to stick something at the beginning of the list or pull something out from the middle? For that, we've got a much more powerful command called splice. You can think of it like the Swiss Army knife for changing your lists. Splice? Yeah, it can look a little scary at first, but it's actually really logical when you break it down. It takes 3 pieces of info. First, the index, where you want to start. Second, how many items you want to remove from that spot. And third, and this part's optional, any new item you want to add right there. The fact that those last 2 parts are flexible is what makes it so incredibly useful. All right. So, making lists, getting stuff out of them, changing them, that's all pretty useful. But where they become a real game changer is when you combine them with another huge programming idea, loops. A loop lets you write one tiny little block of code, and your program will then automatically run it for every single item in your list. So instead of writing 100 lines of code for your 100 high scores, you just write one small loop. It honestly doesn't matter if your list has 3 items or 3 million, the loop just handles it. It's incredible.
Phew, we have covered a lot of ground here, so let's wrap this all up with a quick little cheat sheet to go over the most important stuff.
Okay, so just remember these key things. 1. Arrays are for storing collections of stuff. 2. You find items using their index, that little position number. 3. In JavaScript, and this is the big one, that index always starts at 0. 4. They're alive. You can add, update, and remove items whenever you want. And 5. The real magic happens when you put arrays and loops together.
And that, right there, is the real power of this. You now have this fundamental tool to organize basically any collection of information you can think of. I mean, from a playlist of your favorite songs to a bunch of data for a science experiment. So really, the only question left is, what are you going to build?